Welcome to the Inspectations Podcast, hosted by Justin Starbird, CEO of the Aebli Group. In business, one of the most difficult tasks a leader must do is find a way to inspect what they expect. Too often, great businesses fail or managers lose their way because they were operating based on expectations that they had not yet inspected. The Inspectations Podcast brings together business leaders from all industries to talk about best practices, innovation, leadership, and business development. You're listening to the Inspectations Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Starbird.
Welcome back to this episode of the Inspectations Podcast. My name is Justin Starbird, and today I get to welcome in one of our valued members of the tag team, Matt Boutwell. Matt, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for bringing me in this morning and dealing with my technical issues today. So thank you. I had to go native today. It was crazy. Like I feel like a pioneer. Like I feel like this is the Oregon Trail, right? Like when you're just using your iPhone and making it happen, right?
That's right, man. And the good thing is that we're able to overcome and adapt, right? You know, modern problems require modern solutions, even if they are taking a step back in the world.
It really is. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, we're fortunate to have known each other for, I don't know. I was trying to think of when we met each other, if it was 2015 or earlier, but it's certainly been a while. So this is kind of neat to be able to do this for ourselves.
Yeah. And you know what? It's really, the last 2 years have kind of flown by because it feels like, it's been like 90 days during that entire time frame, right? So like the last 2 years is kind of like snuck into everything. So then when you actually look at the actual years from like 2014, 2015 on, and then you go into 2020 and then you slap 2 years over the top of that, like we're looking anywhere from 6 to 8 at this point. I think it was like late 2014, September 2015, when we were in the studio. And it's funny to see how it's grown since then. And also to see how the world has changed a lot since then as well. But at the end of the day, like there's more mediums to tell your stories now. So how are those stories adapting to those mediums?
Yeah, I want to get into that. But you mentioned the studio. Tell me a little bit about your background and your journey to get here.
It was funny. Around 2005, my son was born, and daycare costs at the time were ridiculous, to the point where like if I had gotten a job, the job itself would have paid for the daycare. And I wasn't real big at that point into like working every single day. I'd been in the military for 3 years, coming right out of high school. And I spent a good long few years trying to like not do all that stuff all the time, being up at a certain time, doing this at a certain time, doing that at a certain time. So I wanted to do things differently. And my son's mother, who was my wife at the time, was like, well, she had a really good job. And she's like, well, I'll just keep working and stay home. I'm like, all right, cool. So I did that. And then I got bored and then started like randomly sports blogging. This is way before social media and stuff. So like if you're watching a game, if you have MLB extra innings or something like that, like you can really, really tell a story about what happened in live and stuff like that. So it's amazing to me that no one ever, the Twitter thing didn't come along until like 4 years later, 2 years later, right, whatever it was.
Yep.
So like once that was the case, like I was doing that, and then I ended up doing some independent stuff for independent newspapers, magazines that I just stumbled upon while working part-time jobs later. That were a little flexible with hours, and just connected, and then ended up on the radio somehow. Really is what it boiled down to.
Right.
I did sports talk radio down in Portland for a bit. Went and left there and started my own company that was there for about a year, and then that kind of morphed into something else. Worked with another local radio company that was more towards the Auburn area, and worked with them until about 2019. And when 2019 happened, I got to do all sorts of different things, whether it was interviewing Patrick Dempsey or governors and congressmen and congresswomen and senators and all that fun stuff, right? Like athletes and
Right.
It's all fun and everything, but at the end of the day, like if you're not working for a major big company, you don't have those benefits and those security things behind you.
Sure.
And when you've got 6 kids, you're trying to make sure that everybody's taken care of with different things, and every one of them has stuff that needs to be taken care of. So
of course,
I was like, I really need to. I also realized that being in the military, back in the day, as much as I hated it, I really did need that structure, and I needed some sort of structure. So I was like, you know what, I got to go back to my old day job, but in some sort of new role, get some sort of flexibility, right? But like at the end of the day, I have all the stuff that I've built over all this time, with radio and sports coverage and all sorts of stuff, partnership with local websites and things of that nature, like MBR and stuff like that, which was social media before social media existed as well. And I wanted to do something with that. And then you kind of mentioned, hey, we still got I need voices for this, that, and the other. And I'm like, hey, I can do that. I love listening to people talk about their businesses and their ideas. And it also freed me up to go do other things. I don't know what I'm doing next in terms of like life or whatever, but I think I want to do more writing and stuff like that. I think I skipped over a lot of that because I was doing video and audio and all that stuff for so long. But I don't know. There's no telling what's going to happen, moving forward. But at the end of the day, like doing this stuff is great because everybody has their own pathway to whatever moment that you're meeting them in. So getting them to be able to talk about that and getting them to be able to come back in and explain how they got to where they are, no matter what that is, and seeing that person's passion about it is one of the best parts of everything, right? Like, so it's like you've brought your kids to places and made moments happen where you got to see their face later and you're like, wow.
Right. There was an accomplishment. Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. We did it. Right. Like,
yeah.
Like as a parent, like you see that with your kid. Well, when you get to see that with someone who looks at their business as though it's their baby, and they have that look in their face about their baby, because the business really can't have a look on their face. It's even if you don't see it, you can hear it in their voice. And then that gets you pumped about whatever could potentially be your baby or your idea. So it's kind of cool to see it morph in that aspect and see that really through every aspect of life.
Yeah. Well, that's how we met, right? I mean, you were doing a show and really you were doing a radio show, and yes, it was a radio show, but you guys were doing something unique and different at the time too, which was and it was copied later. And I'm not saying that you were the trendsetter, but you would take your shows and you would put them up as podcasts on the platforms that were available at the time. And you were interviewing, business owners. And at the time, I mean, I like you said, it's not a big company, but you were the only FM station in the state that was giving morning drive time to entrepreneurs, to business owners, to people with a message. It wasn't an AM station for talk radio where people are blasting out, biased opinions at the top of their lungs to get clicks. You actually had, I mean, in my opinion, you were significantly ahead of your time, even though it was a local show, in everything that you guys were doing. How did you, I mean, what do you see when you look back at that time? How do you remember that?
Well, it's funny that you see it like that, because I always would, at the end of the day, you would hope someone sees it like that, right? Because that's really what you're trying to do. At the end of the day, we had people on from every walk of life and all sides and all parts of the world to talk about things that were important to them and why it was important to them, but also for them to talk about why it would be important to you, right? Like I think as we've all grown up and we've all become, a little bit more, I don't know, I don't want to call it less neighborly, but less community friendly, right? Like I'll tell you, I live in a few places. This is the current place I live in now is one of the few places that I know who my neighbor is,
right.
Like, and it wasn't because like I was, whatever, like just the other neighbors, the other people around, just, it just, in other places I've lived, you don't see that. And, growing up, where I grew up, and up in Western Maine. It was a neighborhood, everybody, when you were riding up the street, you waved hello to everyone. It was, they waved hello to you. They asked how your mom and dad were doing and asked how you were doing. And, whatever it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just, if you were running around town, they gave your dad crap about being a Yankees fan,
Right.
and it was, it was just that was how it went.
Yeah.
You don't get that. You don't get that kind of anymore.
No, instead you have people yelling at you on Facebook or Twitter because you're a Yankees fan, even though they live two houses down, because in the cul-de-sac, somebody has a flag outside and they're pissed that you're supporting a team that's not from there.
Justin, I have a 49ers flag in my yard, and you would honestly think that I can't imagine like what people must think it is sometimes. Like, some people love it, but like, there've been some Cowboys fans, the DoorDashers that roll through here, and they're like, oh, and I'm like, what? Like, what is your problem? Or like, I don't go to your house and like, whatever, like, it's always a Cowboys fan too, always.
Right.
But no, it was nice. It was that sort of, the way it was explained was that old radio station in that TV show Northern Exposure, right?
Yeah.
You have that storefront radio station that you walk in on off the street, or you park in the parking lot for, that's right off of the main highway to head up towards Western Maine, but is in Auburn. And you pull right in there and you talk and take a picture, and it goes online and people listen to it. One of the things I think we missed out on, I wish more of it had been transcribed. Like, I wish we'd had more article-y stuff written. But at the end of the day, like, it eventually got to the point where the newspapers were pretty much, just transcribing ways of making articles out of them. So
yeah, right.
It was great, but it was nice. There was, it was community partnerships with the other folks that were in town, right? It was forging partnerships with other businesses that wanted to get the word out and help build that community. And, some businesses have thrived and continued, and some have gone by the wayside. It's a long time, and you see a lot of things rise and fall through it. So it was always great to be able to do that and show the way it should be done. And, I look around now, I don't pay much attention to the local media scene, but seems like every time I pop, if the occasional time I do scroll my Facebook page, if I do see something local, it's many of the same stuff where they're interviewing folks of, businesses, they're doing all those things. So if that was trend setting, great. If it just caught on because of something else, sure. But, we were, back in the old days of sports stuff, like we'd done that a bit ago. We had an electric company that sponsored everything. So, and they were doing good with it. So, it's one of those deals where like, you just want to help people. And if they want to help you and it can be mutually beneficial, you make it work. And you can get out and get the word about things that can affect you, how they can affect you, and things to look out for in the community, and things to know about, and ways to build and grow together. Because at the end of the day, we don't build and grow together. We get left behind. We don't want anybody getting left behind.
No, and we're fortunate to work with companies, both, I wouldn't say we're not local to Maine per se here at TAG, but, we do work with a lot of companies that have a real tight-knit community in their industry. And you mentioned something there talking about the storytelling and getting their stories out in their own voice. How do you see that as, kind of a cornerstone for businesses as they're looking to grow?
Who is going to tell your story if you haven't told it to somebody the way you want it told? Right? It's your story.
Absolutely. Yep.
Everybody's the author of their own book when they wake up in the morning, right? Like, at the end of the day, when you get up, you're the author of your book, right? It might intertwine with other things that, you're interconnected with on a daily basis, but at the end of the day, that's your book, right?
Yeah.
So if you can explain where that came from, if you can explain how you got there, if you can explain the why, how it started, the this, the that, the other, and bring it all the way through, and you explain that to somebody in detail, and if they have questions, they can follow up and you can answer them. Well, then you already have the template, right? Like, it's already been written out for you. Then somebody writes that stuff down, and then you get it on print. Well, now all of a sudden you got the stuff in print, right? So whether you've got that, we've all heard this phrase, I said, give me that 90-second elevator speech, right? Or that, that icebreaker that makes you want to just fling yourself, into an elevator and get out of the building when that happens. But like that sort of thing, it's right there for you, right? You have talking points, you have things to mention. Sometimes when people come in and tell their stories, or sometimes people would come in and tell their stories, people had never taken the time to ask, well, why this? Why did you decide to build an entire business off of baking eclairs, right?
Right.
Or whatever the example might be. Why did you decide to get into the sausage making business? Like it could be, you don't know. And like, everybody's got a story to tell, and there's a lot of things you can take out of it, whether that's, whatever is going on in your life, there's usually something that you can glean out of it. So it's important for those that are making their stories to share their stories with others so that it is known, right? Because at the end of the day, people aren't just going to the coffee shop anymore, or the local drugstore, or grabbing a cup of coffee, right, at the convenience. Like that's not happening as much anymore. You don't have people just milling about and talking in public anymore. There's many times there are people that you talk to online that you don't, when you see in person, they just give you a head nod, right? That's always weird.
Right.
So
yeah, it is. Well, and for us, it's those folks that were eating the eclairs and the sausage are now customers or patients of our clients with medical device, and I think it's so fascinating how we start off with clients and we talk about their story and what led them to creating a whole, business around some, a cranial facial surgery or medical device design or what have you. But then what you do such a good job of is, as the series continues, digging deeper into what makes them tick. How do you pull that information out of the engineers or, the folks that are actually in the business, creating these new solutions to problems that before we talked to them, you and I had never even heard of this issue before?
Honestly, what I try to do is I try to keep it really simple for me, right? Because I am not, when I'm talking to these folks, like the folks that we talk to that have, they have more degrees than like we have, they have degrees in like so many degrees and have worked in these things for years and other different awards and innovations, and dealing with the mile markers of like of regulatory stuff and things of that nature, right? Like these are folks that have gone over everything with a fine-tooth comb over and over and over again to get their stuff and to get their dreams up and running, or to adapt their dreams, right? So whether they're in the process of doing something, whether they've already created something, whatever that is, you want to make sure that the astonishment or the sheer amount of work that they have done and effort that they have put in to make their dream achievable is unlocked. And what I want to do is make sure that you can look at the big scope and still make it so that anybody listening to that can be like, wow, it's a lot of work to put in for this, that, or this, right? Like these guys must really know what they're doing. They must really know what they're doing about disinfecting hospital rooms or things of that nature, especially post-COVID, right? Or they must really know about how to rebuild that hole in Cousin Eddie's head in Christmas Vacation, right?
Right.
Like think about it. Like that whole movie has changed if they put that cranial closure in there as opposed to that, as opposed to the metal, right? Like the joke was.
Right.
But no, in all seriousness, though, that they're doing stuff that is life-changing for folks that are doing the things that we want, right? We want people to have good sense of self-worth, mental health, right? They're innovations. There are things that they're doing. The things that they're doing for people are helping more people live and be able to live those values. So being able to look at the impact of that and then show that impact but make that impact bite sizable so that you can listen to it on a podcast and understand it, not be like, whoa, that's a lot of just random information.
Right, breaking it down into the subtopics of what goes into it, right? I mean, and making it, like you just said, yeah, you could do a 3-hour podcast, but that's not nearly as effective as something like this, where you and I are talking for 20, 25 minutes.
That's 100% correct. You have to get another bite. If you want people to get interested and they decide to do work on their own, like if they decide to go to your website and download your white papers, if they decide to go through the rest of your podcast series that you have online, that's on them, right? But you're not holding them down and twisting their arm and making them say uncle, so that you do that, right? Like,
right.
You want to put that out there. My job is to find out. One thing you can really tell when somebody's talking is, when they start talking about something, or when they maybe go into a little bit more detail than you were expecting on a certain point. That's usually, to me, like a key point, like, whoa, hey, they're passionate about something here. Something's behind that. So sometimes just asking the why, like, hey, I noticed that, when you were talking about this, you really broke this down to a macro level. Can you explain what's so important about that, and maybe why you realize that was so important, just something generic like that. And they can immediately tell, well, because I'm so glad you noticed, right? Like if we've ever talked to if I've ever talked to an artist or an athlete or a coach or an official or anybody, if you notice something that they have done that somebody else maybe hasn't said to them or maybe noticed for them before, they really want to break that down for you because they've been waiting for someone to ask, right?
Well, isn't that like that?
Your goal is to find that question, not so much that, okay, I've answered this question a million times. It's, I really have been dying to answer this question. And then, right? That's when the passion comes in, because then they're explaining it. And then you're like, whoa, okay, right? Like, we've had interviews with passion, we've had interviews without passion, and you definitely can tell the difference between the two.
Well, I laugh when you say that, because you're giving sports as an example, and you and I both admire the Patriots dynasty as something that should be celebrated in different ways. But their head coach Belichick is famous for not answering questions, or answering questions as he sees fit. And then you'll have a random Tuesday press conference, and a reporter will ask about kickoff, and he'll sit there for 30 minutes and explain the intricacies and all that goes into planning a kickoff, or some really minute position on the field, like left guard, and explain, where his footwork should be on this play. And, if he turns this many degrees in the incorrect direction, how Brady or Mac Jones or whomever is back there will get annihilated.
Yeah, no, it's great. And you'll see that sometimes, because he'll get passionate about something. I heard him, there was an interview a couple of weeks ago where he started talking about Matthew Slater, basically as like the third rung of the triumvirate, right? Like Brady was offense, Lawrence Taylor was defense, Slater was special teams in terms of the top 3 players in each phase of the game that he coached, right?
Right.
That's some pretty high praise. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're special team or whatever. If you have been compared to Lawrence Taylor and Tom Brady based on your level that you bring to the position, which, by the way, special teams to me is like super huge. Right. You can win or lose a game based on special teams. I attended one last year with the 49ers and the Packers. I'm still almost able to feel my pinky toe.
Right. Didn't the Bears go? The Bears went to the Super Bowl against the Colts. I mean, they didn't end up winning, but they went to they went to Super Bowl based on, Devin Hester's ability to change the game.
Right. And in fact, they could have won the Super Bowl had it not rained, which diminished his ability to be able to run back on the kickoff. Like It rained in the second half, and Tiny Hands quarterback fumbles. But at the end of the day, like when it comes to your business and what you're doing, you must be like, man, what does special teams and fumbles have to do with me? Well, every business has its own sort of special teams, right? Like everybody has their stuff they're doing, whether it's us when we're processing audio or video, whether whether it's the folks that transcribe the interviews for online consumption, for reading and things of that nature, to make them bite-sized, to get them out on social media, to get them out on the websites, to get those stories seen by the people who prefer to read, to get those stories heard by the people who prefer to listen, to get those stories seen and heard by people that really just have to watch, like whatever it might be, right? Like there's a special process to each one of those. So if any of that gets fumbled along the way, that story doesn't become quite as impactful because you might miss a medium.
So what do you see as next? I know you and I talk often about what we can do to improve audio quality or questions, or even preparing a guest when they do come on one of the shows that we host. But, where do you see this continuing to trend?
I think it's going to continue to trend in terms of, I think everybody wants to control their narrative, right? No matter what that might be. And that also is dependent on technology, right? As we keep transitioning, we've lost a few mobile networks along the way, right? Remember when 3G was the peak of technology? Yeah. I mean, I remember running radio broadcasts off of 3G prepaid cards back in the day, because that was the only way we could get internet to some of these remote places. Mm-hmm. The technology is not there for that anymore. And the technology now works much better on LTE, and LTE becomes 5G, right? So more and more places are going to become connected with that. That means more and more places are going to want and need their stories told. And they're going to want and need their stories told in such a way that maybe you can see that lobster trap off of Eastport that you might not have seen before, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you're gonna reach out to that person in Fargo that didn't quite have the, there's a cattle ranch 50 miles outside of Fargo that really wants to sell their grass-fed beef, right? But they're not quite sure how to do it. Well, because they can get connected now, maybe that can happen. I think you're going to see more and more and more of that stuff. And what that's going to do is that's going to make the community feeling bigger, right?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be your own personal community. But
well, it also will create
community,
and it also create more competition. So the importance of actually telling your story and breaking it down into consumable bites will actually become even more important.
As much as I hate to say this, everybody wants to know who they're buying from now, right?
Yeah.
All anybody cares about is what did they donate to last election cycle, or this, that, or the other, whatever mile marker they might put on something, right? And that's not, if you do that, great. If you don't do that, great. Whatever that is, right? That's your personal decision. But everybody wants to know what that is. So you need to get your story out there so that people know who you are and they can buy based on that, right? I think when I hear good radio ads, it's because the owner's on the air talking about their product. Yeah, I don't know why. I like that better than them hiring someone to tell me about their product.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's more authentic, and a lot of times a podcast and the ability to tell the story off of a podcast injects the personality that makes a difference in creating that that trust, because people are only buying from folks that they know, like, and trust today. And even if they've never met you, this is like a virtual handshake.
100%. Like they want to know, regardless. They want to know like they know you. Right. Yeah. Like, I don't, that's just how that is. And, and you need to make sure that they feel like they know you when you're talking to them. Right. Yep. And when you're talking to them, it's not because you're talking to them in their face. You're talking to them in this medium right here. Like whoever's listening to this right now, I'm talking to you. Yeah. Right. Like I understand that. I know I'm not technically talking to you as I say this, but when you're listening to this, I am talking to you. Right.
Absolutely.
Like, that's just kind of how that goes.
And they should pick us to do their podcast and do their content strategy.
They 100% should. And yes, we are actively looking for places that handle things. Like I would love to get one of those like grass-fed beef things, like for sure. Like we're actively looking for good products. So please come find us.
Well, Maddie, always great to talk to you. In the spirit of keeping things consumable, I know you and I could talk all day about this stuff. So thanks for joining me this morning.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for bearing with me, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man, all good. Well, you've been listening to the latest episode of the Inspectations Podcast, where we work hard to inspect what we expect.
You have been listening to the Inspectations Podcast. On behalf of your host, Justin Starbird, and our guests today, thank you for listening. To learn more about the Inspectations Podcast, our guest, or the Aebli Group, please visit us at www.aebligroup.com. Be sure to keep inspecting what you are expecting.